No matter how careful you are with computers, you'll eventually encounter a problem that needs to be fixed. Your favorite game may suddenly stop working, you may not be able to print out your history paper, or maybe your monitor will suddenly display fuzzy lines across the screen. In order to fix the computer, you'll need to diagnose the problem, troubleshoot the cause, and verify a solution. When you first notice a problem with your computer, you may not have any idea what's broken. The first step in fixing the issue is typically to try to diagnose the problem. Diagnosis is the process of identifying the general area, subsystem, type of part, or software program that's most likely to have the error. Once you've diagnosed your computer issue, you can focus on a more specific area to figure out what is causing your problem. If you're trying to troubleshoot a problem that's reported by another user, you'll need to spend some time gathering information about the problem. You'll probably want to ask detailed questions, take a look at the computer, or try to recreate the problem on another computer. These things will help you to narrow down the problem and focus on the specific areas that may be causing the problem. Experience is really key in being able to diagnose computers quickly and accurately. The more experience you have with computers, the easier it is to see common problems and find solutions. However, there's no real bulletproof way to diagnose a computer issue. Instead, you need to look at the symptoms and understand how a computer works in order to narrow down the problem. Now, one way to narrow down the problem is to figure out if the problem is due to a hardware issue or a software issue. Your computer has many complex hardware pieces. If any one of them is broken, then you'll need to identify and fix or replace the broken pieces. And since hardware components are physical pieces, your physical senses of hearing, smell, touch, and sight are all important tools. Now, there are many questions that you can ask yourself to narrow down possible hardware problems. Your student text has a list of possible questions that you can use for this purpose. If you do discover a possible hardware issue, you can further narrow down the problem by comparing the problems you find with what you know about the component inside your computer. This method of investigation and comparison should tell you if you have a hardware issue and where it's located in your computer. Now, if you don't find a hardware issue, you may need to consider that it's a software issue instead. If you still have a problem with your computer and you've eliminated all possible hardware problems, then chances are you have a software problem. And just like with hardware issues, there's a series of questions that you can ask yourself when faced with a possible software issue. These questions are listed in your student text. If you do discover a potential software problem, you should further investigate and narrow down the issue to either a problem with the operating system, the applications, or your utility programs. Once you've identified your root problem, it's time to troubleshoot. Troubleshooting, unlike diagnosis, is a step-by-step process that you can use to examine possible causes and to identify the exact problem. Most troubleshooting methods start with a simple idea. Your computer is a simple collection of software and hardware components. In this diagram, the software components are shown on the top and the hardware components are on the bottom. This visual representation of a computer sometimes makes it easier to pin down a specific cause for a problem. Now, there are many different troubleshooting strategies that you can use to figure out the cause of your computer problem. You could choose a bottom-up approach, where you start with the hardware components and work your way up to the software. This method is best when you're pretty sure that the problem is located somewhere in the hardware. The top-down approach works in the opposite way. This method will start with the software and work its way down to the hardware. And this is best when you're pretty sure that the problem is located somewhere in the software. If you have no idea where to start your troubleshooting, you may want to try a divide and conquer method. Now, this method will run some quick tests on both hardware and software to try to eliminate one or the other. The follow the path troubleshooting method focuses on the movement of data within your system. and this method is best when the problem has to do with information that's not being sent or received in a normal way. Finally, there's the spot the difference troubleshooting method. And this method is fantastic when you have two computers, one working and one not, that you can compare side by side. Any difference between the two computers may point you to the root cause of the problem. Once you've finished diagnosing and troubleshooting your computer problem, you should have a really good idea of the root cause. This idea is often called a theory or a hypothesis. Now, your next step is to test your theory by making changes to your computer that you believe will correct the suspected problem. Did your fix solve the issue? If so, then you've successfully completed the troubleshooting process. If not, then you may need to back up and try the next most likely solution. And this process is repeated until the problem is solved. Now, documenting your travels through the diagnosis and troubleshooting of your computer is often a really good idea. Writing down information about the problem and the steps you took to solve it may help you or others in future troubleshooting efforts.